Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and today I'm excited to have Seth Johnson, the CEO and co-founder of Redi2 Technologies, on the show. Seth has been on the tech development side of the industry for most of his career. He was working at a technology company before making a pretty impressive proposal to their CEO to spin off and start his own company, leveraging the technology his old company had actually built. It was a win-win and ultimately launched his company to being the premier fee-billing solution in the wealth management space. His company has built several different products, with the main focus for today's show being BillFin, as it handles AUM billing for RIAs. Seth has a really cool story of entrepreneurship and doing whatever it takes to be successful. I think you're really going to like this one. Redi2 Technologies is a market-leading billing and revenue management solution provider founded in 2002. Redi2 offers 3 billing solutions, with each catering to a specific segment of the financial services industry. In production since 1998, Redi2 Revenue Manager, the company's flagship product, is the investment management industry's first software-as-a-service enterprise billing solution. In 2009, Redi2 launched its second enterprise billing offering, Wealth Manager Enterprise, or WME. WME is purpose-built for the U.S.-based correspondent broker-dealer and TAMP segments, as well as the technology behind Pershing's NetX 360 platform. In 2014, Redi2 introduced BillFin, which is the first cloud-based billing solution for independent financial advisors and RIAs. BillFin is currently the platform of choice for over 200 advisory firms and their custodial firms. Seamlessly integrated with TD Ameritrade, Schwab, RBC, and other industry platforms, BillFin has been getting a lot of attention from the industry. All in all, Redi2's solution process fees for more than 400 financial firms around the globe. For more information, visit www.redi2.com. That's REDI2.com. You can find any of the resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/96. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for throughout our career that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Seth. Hey, Seth, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I always get excited to talk to entrepreneurs, and it's funny because I always worried whenever we first launched XYPN Radio that folks wouldn't enjoy the vendor conversations as much with folks that are, that have services or products to sell to advisors. But they love the entrepreneurial stories, because many times by the time a vendor makes it on this show, you've found some success and have some awesome tips and tricks and just a cool story to tell. So it's always fun for me to sort of explore that. And listeners know by now, this is sort of my passion is learning how people find success, because it's amazing just to learn from folks that have sort of been there, done that, and are, finding that success. So I believe we met actually at Schwab Impact last year when you had, and I'm not sure, was that the first conference that y'all had exhibited the BillFin product at, which we'll talk more about what that is, but is that the first time y'all had exhibited that product?
I believe that was the second time.
Second, okay.
Yeah, we were there the year before, but we were mostly in a stage where we were preparing to launch BillFin. So the second year, the year that we met, was a year that we had a lot more traction and just a lot more touch points within the industry and more exposure. And
a completed product, which as someone who is in the middle of tech development and has learned the lesson of it's never really done. So let's take a step back and sort of start from the beginning. So is sort of fintech and tech development, has that always been your path? Or I guess, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up, when you were in, college?
That's a great question. Right out of college, I started working at a software company, an enterprise software development company, and they focused on using a proprietary development platform. That was a couple of founders that had worked with Larry Ellison at Oracle that built up this company. And that's where I met Furman Garcia. He's the other co-founder of the firm. He was the product development manager. I was the client relationship manager. We were staffed on a product line that was focused on Revenue Manager, which is a billing system that had been built for one of the world's largest institutional money managers. And so that was, I started back there in 1999, and I then moved to the San Francisco Bay Area after working at this software company for a year. Furman and I, we just started building up a good friendship, good working relationship that had just kind of morphed into, how can we do better for ourselves and how can we do better for our clients? And that's when we decided that as we saw the troubles that our company was having, going through layoffs and going through the difficulties of the dot-com bubble bursting, and then September 11th. So, this was back 15 years ago. We met on the weekend at an IKEA and put together a business plan. It was funny. I actually made a phone call to the town car driver of our company, wondering whether or not he was going to be driving our CEO, who was in town, to the airport. He confirmed that he was going to picking her up at a certain hour, and so Furman and I just got ready when she came out of our office. We jumped into the elevator with her, and we rode that elevator down and asked if we could jump into the town car, and because we had something that we wanted to present to her, and she was open to it. And so that's kind of where the dialogue and all of the negotiations began, is when we were in the back seat of a town car with our company's CEO, convincing her that it would be a great idea to let us spin off this billing system for large asset management firms. So, like I mentioned, that deal was finally consummated in October of 2002. So we're looking at a 15th anniversary here in about, 6 more months. So
yeah, that's fantastic. So many IKEA jokes to make around writing a business plan at IKEA. I've never thought about their, eating Swedish meatballs and coming up with a new business. It's like, but hey, you got to meet somewhere. So one of the interesting things, I think, through all of the episodes that we've done on this show is just what makes entrepreneurs just a little different. Not only the willingness to sort of take on the risk of starting a business and that sort of thing, but just the willingness to make a phone call to a town car driver, to then jump into the car with a CEO and take that opportunity to make the presentation in sort of a captive environment. Because getting a CEO of that type of company in an hour-long meeting probably would have taken a lot of hoops to jump through, and you would have had to present it to other people instead of just directly to the CEO, and who knows what their reaction would have been. So it's always impressive to me, and that it's just awesome to hear, what it actually took for you to make that happen. So what was the pitch? So you're working for this big company, you have this idea were you already working on the technology, or it was an idea for the technology that you could build at that point?
Well, what had happened, the proprietary development platform had a first win, and that first win was a billing system for, at the time, the world's largest institutional money manager based out of San Francisco there. And once they completed that project, they ended up going public and then focusing on 6 different industry verticals and using their proprietary development platform to penetrate different industry verticals like healthcare, telecommunication, energy, and so on and so forth. So we were staffed in the investment management product line. And as our company had all these challenges and all these layoffs, we were put in a position where all we focused on was this billing system for institutional money managers. They had a junior sales guy that they staffed on the product line, and so it was licensed to other asset management firms. And so for us, as they went through these troubles, they kept on putting a product line manager over us. And so and they kept on changing that out, like every 3 or 6 months. And so we were in this position where we were always presenting to a new product line manager what the strengths were of our product line, what the weaknesses were, what the opportunities were in the market, what the threats were. And so we got really good pitching and understanding where all the opportunities were. And we knew that this was a good business and that there was very little competition at the time. So we just felt that it was in our best interest to break away from this company or the firm that owned the proprietary development platform and just build a company around becoming the best at providing fee billing and revenue management solutions to the financial services industry. So once that happened, kind of read books like Built to Last, Good to Great, just try to wrap our head around the E-Myth. These are some of the business books that we just devoured at the very beginning to say, how do you run a company? We have no idea. We know that there are clients that need what we have, and we need to take good care of them and focus on their needs and the trajectory of their business and the dynamics of where their business was going. And then there were many other asset management firms out there that were just still using Excel spreadsheets. So we just needed to get on the road and go hunt them down.
And I think there are still asset managers using Excel spreadsheets because we'll talk more about this. But I think I was still deducting fees using an Excel spreadsheet when I started my firm in 2012. So, but it's funny, some of those books that you mentioned, those were the same books I read in 2012 when I was starting my firm. So it's funny that those are, I'm not even sure I realized most of those were written in 2002. So they're still these like fantastic foundational books, because I think we assume that folks are born with this innate ability to start and run a business. They're just like born to be entrepreneurs. And while I think some of us are born with a higher risk tolerance, and maybe we're better, some folks are better at problem solving than others or whatnot, running a business is a skill set. And the best way to learn that skill set is from the people who are either really, really good at it, or like Collins with Good to Great, study all the really greats. I'm not sure that he runs a business, but has done a ton of research on all of the great business owners and companies. It's amazing the shortcut that is to, being able to get started off on the right foot and not trying to recreate the wheel and learning everything as you go.
Yeah. Those books were very helpful. Although you did mention that there are individuals that have a higher risk tolerance, and that's true. And there's people that just have a desire to bring to a market what people need and to improve their lives by making that happen. I can remember the first entrepreneurial effort that I had was in kindergarten. I shared a room with my brother. I grew up in a family with I'm number 8 of 10, and so a lot of kids, and had to find a way to have spending money. You had to get creative. So I saw all of the stuffed animals on his bed. Just they were there, kind of taking up space, and I just felt, hey, maybe somebody would want those. So I took them off his bed, went in my front yard, put a sign that said $1 for big stuffed animals, 50 cents for little stuffed animals, and my big sister came, and all of her friends got out of the van, and they bought me out. And my brother has since forgiven me. That was my first foray into being an entrepreneur, and I've taken those desires to, just to use the capital market system to improve life as best as I can.
Yeah, it's funny you say desire. Sometimes I call it a compulsion, that it's just like this inescapable feeling when you see a problem that can be that you think you can fix. It's hard to look away. And I find this in entrepreneurship in general, that once you start a business and you learn how to market and you have some success there and you learn how to leverage technology, it's like every business you walk into, or I'll just say this for myself. Every business I walk into, like, I have this ego moment of like, oh, I could fix your marketing, or I could fix this inefficiency over here. And I'm sure that same business owner could walk into my business and go like, what in the world are you doing here? Just because we can always spot holes in other people's stuff. But it really is this kind of cool mindset shift whenever you start to realize like you have the power and the capacity to help solve people's problems. For most listeners, that's as a financial advisor and helping your clients be able to solve their personal financial problems and meet their life goals. As somebody who supports financial advisors, it's, you probably didn't start out thinking like, oh, well, in life, when you're in kindergarten, you weren't thinking, oh, when I grow up, I want to develop revenue billing technology. And yet it's amazing how much that helps advisors be able to do their job better. I don't know. It's just an interesting mindset shift, I think, as you sort of get into this world. Yeah,
very well said. And, we've really enjoyed the opportunities that we've had to start getting to know the, financial advisors, these entrepreneurs that are building their own book of business. The first 10 years of Redi2 Technologies was focused on enterprise software. And so we were working with large companies that had to go through a big, long, drawn-out sales process. Could take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years for an asset management firm to make a decision. Big implementation projects, very costly. Had to go through RFPs and go through due diligence questionnaires. One of our largest clients is Bank of New York Mellon, and they've been, fantastic to work with. We've got a great relationship with them. But that's just the nature of institutional money managers. They've got so much invested in the procurement process, and so we navigated those waters successfully over time. But this shift that we made basically around 2013 to recognize that there was a market that we felt that was just underserved. We would get phone calls from advisors, these entrepreneurs that wanted to start their own practice but needed something to calculate their management fees. And they would come to us and we would do a demonstration of our enterprise institutional asset management billing system, Revenue Manager. And it basically said, well, that's a Cadillac. I remember when I can't afford that, but yeah, that's all the functionality that I'd ever want and I'd ever need. We gave them a pricing proposal and then we never heard from them again. And it was just chirping. So once that happened, a dozen or more times, we realized that our marketing and all of our traction and branding within the industry, we were being picked up and found by these financial advisors, and they needed something. Many of these financial advisors that are starting out, they cannot afford these extensive portfolio management platforms that have some billing capability available. When they're starting their practice, that's just not the systems that they're prepared to take on yet. And so we've been able to come to market with BillFin. It was launched in 2015, and it's just been well received. It was the first time in our company's history that we actually went through the process of the user experience and working with a design firm to help us with the interactions. We had a client advisory board that we established, had about 5 advisors that had come to us needing billing, and we went to each one of them and said, hey, listen, we don't have what you need today, but we want to bring to market something that you can help us build and you can help us design. And so with the interactions that we had, Furman led this process of the design and going through that interaction with the clients. But it was the first time as a software firm that we were able to do that. And it was very fun, a lot of energy. The relationship that we built with the client advisory board was fantastic. Their feedback was critical. From there, once we launched, back in September of 2015, we were in a position to see how we did. We launched the product, and at the end of that year, at the end of 2015, we had 18 advisors on the platform. So a little bit of trickling traction. And then fast forward a year later, when you and I met at Schwab Impact, we were going into the end of 2016. And at that time, we ended the year with about 180 advisors. So the growth from 18 to 180 was a good one. And we're excited because, we know that the day will come. Well, there'll be thousands of advisors on BillFin, and we're working out a lot of partnerships and with certain firms. We're also working with the custodians just to make sure that we can get the connectivity and the API built out, because we see ourselves as the pioneer of hosted multi-tenant SaaS-based billing for financial advisors. We believe that this is the first product of its kind to hit the market, and it allows that connectivity, that API, the RESTful web services that we use to ensure that the data can be brought into BillFin seamlessly on the onboarding process. No implementation project, just a few clicks, and then you can set up your accounts and you can get ready for your first monthly or quarterly billing.
Whole different world than launching technology back in 2002, huh?
Oh, yeah.
So I love it. And again, this is one of those, being able to see a need and have the idea, and ideas are a dime a dozen, right? Like if you meet anyone on the street, they have this great business idea. And the truth is a lot of them are actually pretty good, but it requires a couple of things. It requires capital, which I want to circle back to that part of the conversation as well. But, in having some established capital revenue streams to be able to support spinning off additional businesses and things like that. But it requires the willingness to just go after it, which, many times I think is the hard part for folks that are trying to become an entrepreneur, that are trying to get into this space of, I'm going to solve people's problems, that they're not able to make the leap for one reason or another. So just to circle back real quick, because I'm curious about the 2002 sort of spin-off And then I want to fast forward back up to BillFin launch. When you spun off and sort of talked the CEO into allowing the spin off, did they own the company, or did you just get them to agree to let you and your co-founder walk with some of the technology? Like what was that process like?
Well, they owned the proprietary development technology stack that Revenue Manager was built with. And so, yes, they owned every product that they had built with this rapid application development tool. And so when we spun off, the reason why they allowed, two 25-year-olds or however old we were back then, the reason why they gave us such a good price that was amenable to the angel investors that we had found was because that there was going to be a revenue stream of royalties or of support for that technology platform that we were using. So that's something that we navigated for the first 5 years of the business. So for them, it was a win-win. Win that we're going to have these two ambitious entrepreneurs take a product that was in our portfolio, let them have at it, and let them use their passion and ambition to grow this and to distribute this enterprise institutional asset management billing system to that industry. And as they grow, then we'd get a revenue stream from their success. However, again, I mentioned that one of the reasons why they were so amenable to the discussion is because they were having many difficulties navigating at that time, post September 11th, all the budgets dried up on the enterprise software. Many of them did. And that's when we broke off, they actually, we get the sense by the way the contract was written that they thought that we were probably going to go out of business within 12 months. So because there's, they just, that's what it appeared like as we reviewed the contract and some of the nuances of if we were to ever, have an event, a disruptive event, then, they could basically pull the IP back. What happened, we thought they were going to go out of business. And so they had a significant fourth or fifth round of layoffs the Monday after we signed the contract. And we were told later by one of their managers that the funds that they had raised through the sale of Revenue Manager allowed them to bridge a couple more months to get some other private equity firms to help them, continue on. So what happened was 5 years later, we actually bought out the clause in the contract. So we went to them and said, we're not going to order support anymore. We're not going to pay any more royalties. Let's come up with an agreement. And we did. So we bought out the clause that we had to use their proprietary development platform. So that is exactly the same time that we actually launched our hosted delivery model to the institutional market. We offered Revenue Manager as a hosted solution to firms that were interested. And we thought it would be the mid-tier asset management firms, but actually some of our largest clients were the first to jump on and adopt that deployment methodology. It was very successful. So we bought out the clause that kind of we felt handcuffed by in 2007, and then we launched our hosted solution. From there, we continued growing. We actually became involved with the MMI, the Money Management Institute. I was able to serve as the co-chair of the Billing Standards Subcommittee for the managed account industry. And so because of our relationship...
Who knew that even existed? What a great fit for you. It's like they designed a committee chair for you.
Right. And so we actually had a lot of work with one of the world's largest clearing and custody houses. And we worked together with them and built out a managed account billing capability for Pershing, actually, a company owned by Bank of New York Mellon. They had 3 or 4 different billing silos within their operations because of acquisition and so on and so forth that we were able to consolidate into one. And that was our second product, is what we refer to as Wealth Manager product that takes care of over 1.3 million accounts, services the needs of about 215 independent broker-dealers. That's the second enterprise solution that came to market. That went live in 2010 and did a whole bunch more work all through 2012. And so we have Revenue Manager, we have Wealth Manager. Those two cater to institutional money managers and TAMPs, or independent broker-dealers, on the wealth management side with managed account operations. That's where we were in 2013 when the board of directors decided what would our next move be.
So just to clarify, those two systems with Revenue Manager and Wealth Manager, those were were they fee billing solutions for these large institutions? So this is how the banks and TAMPs and broker dealers are billing their clients, and they're using your technology to do that?
Yes. So there are two client sets that we had at the time. Number one was the asset servicing provider, kind of a outsourced billing for asset managers. So our first client at Redi2 Technologies back in 2004 was, at the time, Mellon Investment Manager Solutions out of Pittsburgh and Los Angeles. So they had a client that they'd completed this back office lift out. And when they did this back office lift out, they needed a quick win to make their client happy. And they identified that their billing system and operations was really cumbersome and not efficient. And so that was one of our first opportunities to license Revenue Manager as Redi2 Technologies with Mellon Investment Manager Solutions. And that was back, like I said, 2004. We went live in 2005. And then they introduced us to Newton Investment Management in London, one of a Bank of New York Mellon Asset Management affiliate. So another portion of their business, another wing, caters to the asset management industry. And they have many of these affiliates. And so one of them is Newton Investment Management. So we built the functionality that we needed for the UK and Europe with all of their taxation laws and regulations. That went live in 2006. So and that's how we got off the ground. That's really the traction that we got back in the early 2000s. And then once that was completed, we were introduced to the Money Management Institute in 2006, and then came to market with. And this is a big differentiator for us. Is when it comes to our wealth management product, it's what we claim to be the only billing system, enterprise billing system for firms with managed account capabilities, built from the ground up and architected specifically for that. Other vendors have taken their institutional billing system and tried to morph it into one that would cater to managed accounts, and that's been really cumbersome and really difficult to pull off. But when you start an architect of product from the ground up, an opportunity to just really get what the user needs for their specific practice and for their specific business, and that was the opportunity we had within the wealth management space, specifically for managed accounts.
So we've mentioned a couple of different company names. So just to clarify, Redi2 is the name that we see a lot of, but then we also have BillFin. So does Redi2 own or just sort of have these three different products, or is BillFin and Revenue Manager, all of these, are they all separate companies with separate brands? Like, how have you managed, I guess, the branding side of it?
Yeah, so Redi2 Technologies is the company that owns three billing products that are designed for different segments within the financial services industry. So our IP is Revenue Manager for institutional money managers, is Wealth Manager for those firms, TAMPs, IBDs that have a managed account book of business that they need to bill for. And then BillFin is our product specifically for independent-RIAs, financial advisors that need a billing utility to do their billing.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. So I do want to talk a little bit about, and part of this, I don't know if listeners really care about this, but this is a part that just really fascinates me, is the process of going to market with a product. Because as an advisor, before I ever stepped foot into tech development, it just sort of seemed like software, I don't want to say appears out of thin air, but you just think of like software just sort of is there and it works and people ask for features, and it's amazing just what all goes into the development of technology. So specifically around BillFin, you mentioned, it sounds like you did it quote unquote the right way, which is actually working with a design firm, which is something that's, I don't think a lot of folks do, because if you look at the technology in the financial planner space, so much of our technology grew out of like Access databases and Excel spreadsheets that like got turned into technology. It's very different to come in with the front end design and then sort of hook the back end in. So I guess, what is the process of working with a design firm and sort of that user experience and that sort of thing? Because again, it's not something, I don't think that's very common in the fintech, I guess, advisor facing fintech space, because people hear me say all the time, like the technology in financial services for advisors just flat out sucks. I mean, it's just bad, just overall. We have some nice little pockets that are coming along. But I mean, when I compare our technology to other industries, it's just embarrassing in many ways, and particularly for the client that actually has to see some of our technology through client portals and that sort of thing. But I digress. I guess, so what is that process like to actually go hire a design firm and say, hey, this is our vision, but like, how do you decide where to put the button and what color it is? I guess, what does that all look like?
Well, that's a great question, because we feel this has helped really set BillFin apart as a simple product that's easy to use, that adds a lot of value. So in the past, working with an enterprise solution, you really have to go where the money is just to survive, right? And so you work with these large clients that have big budgets, and they have a need, and they need it to be automated, and they need it to be done quickly and within a certain time frame. And so they're willing to pay sizable amounts of money for you to get your top talent to cater to those needs, specifically to make sure that these large asset management firms are happy and that they can automate their business. This, with BillFin, it was completely different. We did not build this product at the whim and demand of a large company with deep pockets. So because we were successful in building up two other lines of business, or two other billing systems that had a great clientele that we were very happy working with in that type of environment, those, some of the profit margin that came from that really enabled us to kind of take a step back and say, okay, how is software done right? And that's when we, and it's interesting, because you go through a process of individuals, engineers, architects that have been focused on automating billing for so many years. You have to make a decision as to whether or not you want to include somebody from the outside to help with the process, because you have to kind of break down some of your norms, because you tend to think that you can figure this out. It for some of the largest institutional money managers in the world, some of these largest TAMPs and independent broker-dealers in the United States. So, I got this. I know what the financial advisor needs. But it takes some humility to kind of step back and say, okay, let's bring in somebody from the outside to be somewhat of a mediator. We're going to present our designs. We're going to have we're going to wireframe them out. We're going to present them to before we even write a line of code, we're going to present these wireframes to a client advisory board that's willing to participate and get their feedback. And we were amazed at what we found in those interactive design discussions with the members of the client advisory board. It took a lot of work. Typically did those exchanges on a Friday, and we go through maybe 4 or 5 presentations per Friday, and it was exhausting at the end of the day. You're taking a lot of feedback, and you're working with the design team to actually take the feedback, build out the wireframe so that we could do another interactive session the following week. And over the course of 3 to 4 months, we finally realized how much of the initial design that we thought would be demanded or wanted within the financial advisory market was completely spun on its head. What came to market was really what were the recommendations. Was our initial design, but modified and enhanced and improved and tweaked to meet exactly what they were expecting to see when it came to do their work. Because a financial advisor doing their billing at the end of a quarter is much different than the Bank of New York Mellon or Prudential doing their billing at the end of a quarter.
And to sort of connect this back to the advisors listening, this is the bootstrapped lean startup model. I mean, for folks that are out there, go pick up the book, Lean Startup. Eric Ries, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, wrote the book on basically doing exactly what you just did, which is, you sort of had 2 options. Option A is best. So you're going to build the product and then put it out to market and see how it does. I don't know what your development costs would have been, but you're probably out several $100,000. You're out a lot of time and energy. And then you sort of figure out, what does life look like with this product and what improvements do you make? Option B is presumably a much leaner budget because you're working just on the front end. So you're working with designers and not the actual engineers on the back end. And you go through this iterative process with your with your prospective clients, the folks that are going to buy your product, if you design for them what they need, in the end, you have exactly what they're asking for. What, the system is working the way that they believe it needs to be working. And then you sort of connect the back end. In the end, you probably have spent around the same amount of money whenever you have that final product, but it's the product that your consumer, that your customer actually wants to buy, and not the one that you thought they'd want to buy. And then you have to make updates. And it's much easier to start from scratch than to make edits to an existing infrastructure. And so for financial advisors out there, I think that we tend to fall into the camp of that sort of that first model where we say, hey, I'm a financial advisor. I know what my clients are going to need. I'm going to pick a niche market and design the service model and design the marketing, and I'm going to go to market and I'm going to get my clients. And when the clients don't show up, right off the bat, it's like, okay, well, what do I do? And yet, if we turn that on its head sort of and follow your model, it's, hey, let me pull together 5 or 10 prospective clients that I know I would love to work with, family, friends, acquaintances, whatever it is. But I just know their situation are ones that I want, and really start to define, hey, this is the service model. This is the fee structure. This is the technology we're going to be using. Which client portal do I use? Well, let me show you the client portals and see which one meets your needs, because they each cater to a different clientele, and really define the firm before you actually build out all the infrastructure for it. And I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs do that. And yet in the end, I think you're set up much better for success going the route that you went, as opposed to let me just build it and see who likes it once I go live.
Yeah, it's a whole different frame of mind that you attack the problem from. It takes a major commitment to really stick the course, because it's so easy just to say, you know what, we've gotten enough feedback, we're going to run, and we're going to run with this hard, and this is the direction we're going. If we would have done that, we would have found in the adoption of BillFin that we would have had a lot more hiccups and a lot less adoption, frankly. So it was, one of our commitments was we wanted this system to be, we wanted the contribution to come from those that were going to be using it, and that's, it's a shift. It's a major shift in how you go about producing software, and that's really the trend these days. It's all about that user experience. It's about the usability of the application. Those are the software products that get adoption. Those are the ones that get traction. It's got to have the end user and their experience in mind, and that was our commitment as we launched this.
And as you said earlier, and I think this is a great point, is it takes humility. As an entrepreneur, we see a problem, just like I was saying, when I walk into a business, I see a problem and I can fix it because I have that arrogance and that ego. And it takes a lot to be able to say, you know what, maybe I don't know best. Maybe I don't know what our ideal consumer or our customer is asking for. So let me just ask them. And taking that feedback is really hard, because when you roll something out that you just know they're going to love it and you present it and you just know this is going to be the best thing they've ever seen, and they're like, no, that's not what we want. It can be a little difficult to take that feedback, but it's so important to the process and the growth process. And again, like in financial services, we just tend to get very stuck. I guess tech is just wired differently than financial advisors. So in tech development, we know we're always iterating. We know we're never done. We're always going to be adding features or functionality or doing something else. Whereas in financial services, we tend to sort of get in a groove, and that groove becomes a rut, and then we just get stuck. So I'm curious for sort of two more questions in relation to this. One being, how do you know? I get LinkedIn messages all the time from tech developers that say, hey, we're trying to solve a problem. Could we talk with you about your pain points? I don't know if you get these, but like advisors get dozens of emails a day, or I feel like every week or month, regarding, hey, we're going to try to build something to solve your problem. Any recommendations for advisors on vetting the ones that are serious versus the ones that are just taking up time?
Well, I can speak from our experience, and that was that we had a credible message that we could, and a compelling message that we could share with them. We had this high-end system, these high-end systems, I should say, that were catering to firms that were very respected within financial services. So they knew that there was something about us that was established. That there was something there that here you have the founders of an enterprise software financial services technology company coming to a financial advisor and basically saying, we want to take everything we know, and we want to apply it to this industry segment. Can you help us with that? It was also facilitated by this concept that these firms actually needed and were looking for what didn't exist. So that's a big part of it as well, is that they were searching for this, and they had seen other systems, and they'd gone through a search process, and they weren't happy with what existed. They weren't happy with their options. But as advisors get these messages or get pinged by budding entrepreneurs within the fintech space, you've really got to make sure that they've got a credible backing in order for them to go the distance and bring something to market, because financial advisors don't like to pay a lot of money for their technology.
No, they do not. We are a very cheap group.
they scrutinize every dollar, and rightly so. It's financial wisdom as to, a penny saved is a penny earned. So we knew that there needed to be a critical mass that would need to be built up over time. And to achieve that, you have to be, one of the books that we read was this Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, who teaches at HBS. This concept of the sustaining innovation versus the disruptive innovation. Some of the principles that he talked about and that he wrote about really resonated with us, and that we knew that we were in a market that had a need at the enterprise level, but we recognized that if we didn't do this, that somebody else would. Somebody else out there would try to figure this out, and then what would the future have looked like for our enterprise products? Could they have gone upstream after they have figured this market out? It was a strategy that we used to make sure that we became the leading and the first to market with an independent billing solution, because yes, you can find billing capabilities within the portfolio management solutions and even with the custodians, but it's limited, and it's not going to give you the flexibility that an entrepreneur and a financial advisor needs.
I'm going to have to read that book. That is not one that I have read, but it sort of ties into my second question about all of that, which is, how do you decide between features, in your world or as an advisor, things that clients are asking for or prospective clients are asking for, and say, hey, can you do this other thing, versus your vision for the company? So again, we want to build something that folks will buy, but sometimes it's hard to connect sort of immediate gratification needs from our clients with where we see the vision and sort of the direction that we're going. So how do you, I guess, as a team, make decisions around, do we build this feature set for our clients because they're asking for it? Do we have to just sort of stick to our guns and say, hey, we sort of know the direction we're going, which may be different than where our customers really see it, but they're going to be happy when we get there? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And this is where I've got to hand it to Furman, my business partner, the other co-founder of the firm. It's because this is his responsibility. This is this is the difficult decision. You have a product roadmap that you establish. We get feedback from the clients, from our prospects. There are prospects that come to us and they want the kitchen sink. They want BillFin, but then they want an extension to BillFin that would really require customization, a tweak that all the other clients may not resonate with. And then it can start to clutter the simplicity of the application that our market, the independent registered investment advisor market, would really just what they need. And they don't want this application to get cluttered. They want functions to be added. They want features to be added. And we have that. And we're working on that. But it's because we have worked the more demanding clients and we know where that takes us, a lot of customization. We, Furman and his team have been able to kind of take a step back and say, okay, this demand here has been given to us on multiple occasions, and we know what those features sets are, and then they are in the roadmap, and we're marching towards incorporating them to the product. Then you have a larger RIA that is aware of BillFin, using BillFin, and their requests to get functionality are requests that we completely recognize because our enterprise asset management billing system already has it. So that's where we can basically draw the line. We can say, you know what, if you need that much complexity, then we know where to send you. You're going to go there and it's going to require an implementation and you're going to get customization. We can kind of hand them off to to another business unit within Redi2 Technologies, and that's how we can cope with it. But if it's your only product, that it becomes much more difficult.
A little more difficult to send the business out the door, and that's where I think a lot of advisors struggle is because we don't have the client base that BillFin does. I mean, you went from 18 to 180 clients. Advisory firms don't do that. We go from like 12 to 24 in 12 months. So not quite as many people making the request, but you make a good point around, you just have to sort of see when multiple people are asking for the same thing. So one client says, could you offer tax preparation? May not be, a high priority item, but when a large percentage of your client base is starting to say, hey, any way you can incorporate, like you can just do my taxes. Maybe that's when you start to look at, okay, do I go get the enrolled agent or get my CPA, or do I hire one to come in and provide this service? So it's really because I think what happens is we see dollar signs. We have that big client come in and they've got the money and we know we can make money off of, by working with them. And they ask for something and we're like, oh, well, I guess I will. Like I'll make an exception here. And then you make an exception there. And eventually you don't have a core because all you have are a bunch of exceptions, which is impossible to scale. You cannot scale a bunch of exceptions, which I wonder if you sort of saw that creating a bunch of different solutions for a bunch of different enterprises. It's hard to have a core when everyone needs something unique. So as sort of the industry is moving forward, Department of Labor ruling, whether it gets delayed or not, is sort of forcing people or forcing advisors into this fiduciary fee for service space. I guess, what are you seeing from the industry and sort of what's the plan for BillFin going forward to facilitate, this huge shift, this major catalyst that was Department of Labor ruling, but this huge shift in the industry towards this new model of planning?
Well, it's really good for BillFin because there are many financial advisors out there that may be coming from a commissionable book of business that want to convert that or just transition into being a fee-based RIA. And there are many advisors that are hanging out their own shingle, going at it on their own. And that's, and when they find organizations like yours, the XY Planning Network, that, they get exposed, it's a great network to be a part of, to get exposed to what do we need to do to launch. But this DOL regulation, it has had we've noticed an increase in demand for the billing systems that need to provide more fee disclosures and more backup and more details of how the fees are calculated. And so this regulation has been a positive thing for Redi2 Technologies. We have gotten more new business from it, but it's it's just the right thing. It's the right thing to do to ensure that investors and our clients just have the ability to know what their fee's about and how it's made up. And so it just makes sense.
Yeah, because it's always sort of been a black box of and regulators will say, put the fee calculation on the invoice or something like that. But to actually do like an average daily value calculation is not something you could just slap on an invoice. That's actually an extremely complex calculation. But the other piece being, I think to your point, a lot of these advisors were with broker dealers or they were with entities that handled the billing and they were using your enterprise solution. It was just sort of done for them. And then they go out on their own. It's like, okay, well, how do I deduct fees? And I was joking about it earlier, but, even in 2012, my methodology was I had to, I just did based on the balance at the end of the quarter, but I had to upload an Excel spreadsheet with balances to my custodian for how much I needed to deduct in fees. And everything was, calculated using an Excel spreadsheet, which can work when you have 10 or 15 or 20 clients, more than a little error prone, but it doesn't work real well at scale. And what happens if you have a client that came in midway through the quarter and just all the complexities that come from that? And it should be something that's relatively simple, right? I charge 1% AUM, just deduct my money. But it's not nearly as easy as it seems. So it's always awesome to see sort of these niche, I'll even say hyper niche products getting into the space because they are necessary for us to be able to do our job. And remind me, what is sort of BillFin's pricing structure, sort of the retail pricing structure for advisors coming on board?
Well, we have a starter package for firms that are just launching under 25 million in AUM, and that's $39 a month. Very reasonable. And then it goes up from there. So as their AUM increases, 25 to 50 million, it's $49 a month. You go to, once you are past 50 million in AUM, then we're kind of monitoring your households and the number of households you have. And that can go from $99 a month to all the way up to $600 a month. After you get to a certain point, then of complexity, then we got to engage and kind of do a proposal for your specific operations when you have above 500 million in AUM.
So for anybody that's listening to this episode in like 6 or 12 months, this may not still be the fee structure for BillFin, but I was asking mainly because if you can save just an hour of time, and we talk about this on the show quite a bit, that, you got to look at the value of your time. And if you can save an hour or 2 hours a month or a few hours a quarter handling your billing, it's worth going and getting some of these various technology pieces to facilitate it, because it's amazing how much time suck happens, as well as what happens on the back end when there's an error. Correcting a billing error is no joke. So it requires a lot of paperwork and a lot of record keeping in order to show the regulators how you fix the problem and all of that. So it is worth, looking again at some of these various niche technologies, which some advisors may say, oh, well, that's cool, but I'm not sure I necessarily need it today. You may regret that decision later on. So, well, Seth, I'll close out the episode asking you our famous question at this point. I don't know how famous it really is, but if you could go back and talk to, I guess, the younger Seth, whether this is just sort of getting into entrepreneurship and looking at spinning off your own firm, or even as you're sort of approaching the BillFin decision and launch, if there's one piece of advice you wish you could go back and give yourself, one thing you wish you had known then that you know now, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Raise twice as much money as you need. You think you need to start.
Oh, it's so true.
And then, I think that the advice that I would want to give is you need to focus on your clients' needs. You need to make sure that you are listening to what their problems are. The most successful relationships that we've had as a firm, it's when we've taken the time to just step back and listen and even give feedback or articulate back what we think we heard. Sometimes when you do that, you even get more insight and a better understanding of what their problems are. And once you can articulate what their problem is, and once you can come to the table with a solution, and people really connect with you. And they feel as if you're an advocate for them, you're an advocate for their business, and you're a partner. And just, when you focus on what the client needs and their experience, and really understand what they're trying to achieve, and you can marry that with the technology set that you bring to the market, there's a lot of wins that take place and a lot of momentum that's built up. So most challenges that we've had, it's when we have not been able to connect and communicate well with our prospect or with those clients. But when we do take the time to better understand, to kind of seek to understand before we start trying to present solutions, then we have a much better experience. So just focus on that client.
Great advice for business as well as marriage and all personal relationships. It's just because you think you know what you heard does not mean that's actually what they intended for you to hear. So really opening up those communication channels is really just a huge step. But Seth, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your career story as well as what BillFin's all about. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you at the next conference.
Don't forget to check out Redi2 Technologies and specifically their BillFin solution for financial advisors and RIAs. Designed to be simple and affordable, BillFin automates your fee calculations, creates great-looking client invoices, and generates your custodian fee file. If your accounts are at TD, Schwab, or RBC, they've got you covered. Using a custodian not yet integrated with BillFin? No problem. BillFin offers an easy upload portal where you can upload your data from an Excel spreadsheet until your particular custodial integration is available. Redi2 offers 1 week free trials of BillFin, so visit www.billfin.com or call 617-315-8101 to get started. And we hear their product support team is top notch. Oh yeah, and their plans start at just $39 a month with an annual contract. Definitely go check them out. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.